Honda hasn't built a great driver's car in like 15 years. That's right, I said what I said. The current lineup, I mean, it's fine, it's safe, it's competent, and it's completely forgettable. But there was a window, like roughly 20 years, where Honda was doing things that made even Ferrari engineers take notes, where playing it safe wasn't even part of the conversation. That window is long gone, so today we're going back inside it. We're talking about the 10 greatest Hondas from the era that they'll never be able to replicate. We're talking the golden era of Hondas.
Yo.
What's up, everybody? I'm DC5 James. Now, before anybody starts typing in the comments, I know golden era is going to cause some arguments in there, but let's define it real quick. We're talking roughly the late 1980s through the mid 2000s, the run from the very first VTEC engines through the last naturally aspirated Type Rs, before turbocharging and downsizing took over the lineup. Now, this list is going to be JDM heavy because, frankly, that's where Honda was at its most fearless. Some of these never officially came to the United States, and that's kind of the point. Let's talk about the ranking criteria. We're talking about engineering significance, how it shaped Honda's reputation, and let's be honest, how much I'd want one in my own garage. So let's start the countdown. At number 10, we have the Honda CRX Si. This was from 1988 to 1991. This was before the Type R even was the name that Honda used. The CRX Si was already proving the formula. Take weight out of the equation, don't add power, and the car just does the rest. It weighed in under 2,200 pounds, and it had the 1.6 liter D series, which made a modest amount of power on paper, but somehow it was one of the most rewarding chassis Honda has ever built. There was no power steering, and the car just talked to you. It's number 10 on this list because it's kind of the blueprint. It's not the masterpiece, but everything on this list kind of owes something to the CRX. And at number 9, we have the Honda Civic Si, the EG6 hatchback from 1992 to 1995. The EG hatch is the car that made VTEC a household word among enthusiasts, even outside Japan. The B16A was the first generation VTEC engine, screaming the red line, making genuinely special power for a tiny 1.6 liter engine with zero forced induction. This is the car that proved that high RPM VTEC wasn't just a gimmick. At number 8, I'm going to give it to the Honda Prelude Si VTEC/Type S. This is from 1992 to 2001. Honestly, the Prelude doesn't get talked about enough, and that's kind of a crime. It's super underrated, and that's because Honda used it as kind of a rolling engineering showcase. It had four-wheel steering on certain trims. The H22A4 in the later Type S made serious naturally aspirated power for that era. It had a double wishbone suspension at all four corners that made it handle like nothing else in the price range. The Prelude was Honda really showing off at the time, and that's why it's number 8 on this list. It definitely deserves the recognition. And number 7, one of my favorite cars, I had one when I was a teenager, is the Acura Integra GSR. The GSR's B18 C1 was, for a lot of people outside of Japan, their very first taste of what high-strung Honda VTEC felt like in a daily drivable package. It had front-wheel drive, but with a chassis good enough that it didn't matter. Kind of the gateway car for an entire generation of import enthusiasts, including myself, and that definitely earns it a spot, even with the true Type R still ahead of it on this list. At number 6, we have the Honda Civic Type R. We're talking about the EK9 from 1997 to 2000. This was the first Civic to ever wear the Type R badge, and Honda really didn't hold back on this one. The B16B is pound for pound one of the most impressive naturally aspirated engines ever put in a mass production car. Specific output from a 1.6 liter four-cylinder that still holds up as remarkable decades later. It had welded seam reinforcements, a stripped interior, a helical LSD. This wasn't a trim package, it was actually a different car wearing the same body. It was never officially sold outside Japan, which only added to the legend. I'm giving it number 6, and it's arguably the purest expression of what a hot hatch should mean. Coming in number 5, we have the Honda Beat from 1991 to 1996. Now the Beat is on this list specifically because it proves that the era wasn't just about big power numbers. It was a mid-engine, rear-wheel drive K roadster with a tiny 3-cylinder that needed every bit of its RPM to make the legal K car power cap. And somehow, it's one of the most purely joyful Hondas ever built. This is the same period that gave us the NSX, and Honda used the lessons from one to kind of inform the other. I'm giving this number 5 because it's proof that the golden era wasn't an accident tied to just one platform. The philosophy ran through the entire lineup, from the cheapest car Honda sold all the way up to the most expensive. Next up, number 4, we have the Honda S2000 from 1999 to 2005, also known as the AP1. So, specifically talking about the early AP1 here, this to me, in my opinion, is the purest version because the chassis and engine got revised for the US market later in its life. The F20C redlines at 9,000 RPM and it makes its peak power right near the top of the power band. It had perfect 50-50 weight distribution, it had no power steering pump robbing the feel, and a chassis built around the driver and nothing else. Some people will have this at number 1, and I definitely get it. It's that good, but to me it's number 4 on this list because 3 cars on this list really changed Honda's entire trajectory as a company. This one kind of perfected a formula rather than inventing a new one. At number 3, we have the AP2 S2000, which ran from 2004 to 2009. So just before I said the AP1 S2000 was the purest version, and I stand by that, but the AP2 isn't a watered down AP1 either. It's just kind of a different conversation entirely, and it's one that deserves its own spot. Honda swapped the 2.0 liter F20C for the 2.2 liter F22C. It had a slightly lower redline, yes, but torque that finally showed up before 7,000 RPM. Here's the thing about the AP1 versus AP2 debate. AP1 people are right that the AP1 is sharper, but AP2 people are right that it's faster in the real world. Both groups are kind of missing the point, which is that Honda built 2 versions of one of the greatest roadsters ever made, and we get to argue about which one is actually better. It's kind of a good problem to have. I put it at number 3 because it took something already near perfect and found a direction to evolve it without compromising what made it special. It's kind of harder than it sounds. At number 2, we have the legendary Honda Integra Type R, the DC2 from 1995 to 2001. So if the EK9 Civic Type R is the purest hot hatch, the DC2 Integra Type R is the purest Type R, period. It had hand-finished intake ports, the B18C engine that Honda's own engineers individually inspected before it left the factory. Chassis so good that even now enthusiasts call it one of the best front-wheel drive cars ever made. Full stop, not just for a Honda. This is the car that proved the Type R wasn't just a marketing badge. It actually lived up to the hype. I put it as number 2, but for a lot of people it could be the number 1 as well. But number 1 I have going to none other than the Honda NSX from 1990 to 2005. And to me, there was really no other choice for number 1. The NSX wasn't Honda making a sports car. It was Honda redefining what a supercar was allowed to be. It was reliable enough to daily drive. It was light enough because the body was pretty much all aluminum, which was a first for a production car. And it didn't need absurd power to embarrass cars costing 3 times as much. Senna himself was involved in tuning the chassis during development, and that input shows in how the car drives even decades later. Ferrari engineers reportedly studied it after it launched. The NSX is the single clearest statement of everything this era of Honda stood for. Take something everyone assumes requires compromise and refuse to compromise. This is number 1 on my list for a reason. It's not even close. So that's the list, guys. 10 cars, 1 philosophy, powered through engineering, not through brute force. No turbos, no forced induction, no electronics doing the driver's job for them. Now, obviously, this list is built to start some arguments, and that's kind of half the fun. So drop your own top 3 in the comments. Tell me what I left off. I'm more than happy to debate with anyone. Hopefully you enjoyed this. I'm DC5 James, and I will see you on the next video. Peace.